folks, Robbie Payne with Chrome Unboxed, and today we're going to be taking a first look and giving you some initial impressions on the Samsung Chromebook Plus V2. Now, you'd be remiss for thinking this looks exactly like the Samsung Chromebook Plus that came out about a year and a half ago, and you know, it's somewhat close, but there are quite a few hardware differences we want to kind of talk through, and some performance differences as well. They've added on about 50 bucks to the price, and so I'm trying to figure out if this thing's really worth that extra amount of money, and we'll make that judgment call in the review. Right now, I just want to give you 36 hours in, my first impressions of this device, and talk you through some of the ups and some of the downs I've already noticed. First up, we need to talk about the outer pieces here, and there are reasons that this device is actually a little bit of a different shape than the original one, but we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Just know that it's a wider version of the original Plus, but it's also a little bit more shallow, so it's a little more rectangular overall in its shape. It's still made of mostly aluminum. The original one was all aluminum. This one does have a plastic bottom on it, and so far it's really not bothered me at all. The overall package feels at least a little bit more firm versus the V1 of this device. It had a lot of flex in it before, and there's still a little bit here, which is a little disconcerting, but overall the entire thing is relatively firm. The upper part of the screen for me has felt a little weird, like the weighting of it just seems a little bit off. Like the screen just seems too heavy, and I'm not really sure why that is. I haven't really figured that part out. It could be because there's a lesser screen tech in this one. I'm not really sure what's going on, but it causes the display to wobble just a little bit, and then it just kind of feels weird when you're holding it. But when it's set on a desk and you're using it, it hasn't bothered me one bit at all. So let's talk about that screen. It's one of the defining factors of the original Chromebook Plus and Pro. It was one of the defining things. It was one of the best screens that's ever been on a Chromebook, apart from the original Chromebook Pixels. And it's the same screen that's on the Pixelbook and that's on the Chromebook X2. And so it was one of those things that, like, for all the other parts of the Samsung Chromebook Plus that were kind of annoying, that screen kind of made up for them. And so Samsung's changed that, and I don't know that it's the best move. For one, it's a 16:10 screen now instead of a 3:2. It also drops quite a few pixels. Now it's 1920 by 1200, which is a 1080p class panel. And so it's a lot less pixels. It's 12.2 inches now versus 12.3, and it does feel smaller. Using it, it feels like you're using a smaller screen than when I get the Pixelbook out, which again has the exact same panel as the original Plus. I do kind of like that they reduced the pixel count, because let's be honest, the Chromebook Plus, the original one, struggled quite a bit because that's a bunch of pixels to push. So we've reduced the pixels by a ton on this device. It helps the processor get along a lot better, and so it's a trade-off. Everything still looks really nice and sharp. It's 300 nits versus the 400 of the old panel, so it's not quite as bright. So it's an aspect ratio I don't like quite as much. It's got less pixels and it's not quite as bright. So for most people, they're looking at that and saying, hey, that's a downgrade. But like I said, you're going to get a little bit better performance out of it, which is kind of cool. And it's not such a downgrade that you're looking at it and thinking, oh God, this is a terrible display. So it's just noticeably different, and it's one of the things that changes the overall feel of this device from the version 1. All right, so another benefactor of this slightly different aspect ratio on the screen is the keyboard. The keyboard on the original Plus and Pro was okay. It was a little splashy. The click mechanism was kind of shallow. But the worst part of it was because of the taller screen and the small bezels on the side, they almost had to chop part of the keys off on the left and right. So your delete key was really small, and your enter key was small, and your shift key. So a lot of people really did not like the keyboards on those devices. I'm happy to say that because of the wider screen on this one, now the keyboard goes edge to edge, but you get a full-size keyboard. So it looks the exact same as you'd see on any other Chromebook. Everything's spaced the way you would expect it to be. All the keys are the right size. So all that stuff's really good. The travel is actually really good, and the click mechanism is really good. I'm going to be honest, it's one of my favorites. I'm coming from a Pixelbook at all times when I go to a different keyboard to test out a Chromebook. And usually the fall off is significant because I love the Pixelbook's keyboard. And this one has been really good. It's got really quiet keys, but they're really clicky and tactile, and they feel really good. However, they're not backlit. So it feels like there's just trade-offs over and over with this thing. But overall, I've really enjoyed banging out some articles and doing some work, and even typing code and stuff, not looking down at the keyboard a lot. Everything's spaced right and feels good. So thumbs up on the keyboard other than the backlighting part. And then that brings us to the trackpad. It's been, I don't think it's glass. I'm almost positive it's not glass. However, whatever they made it out of is great at resisting oils. It's nice and smooth. It's about the same size as the old one. and the click mechanism is fantastic. The input methods on this thing have been great. I've really enjoyed using it both in my lap and on a desk. Nothing to complain about here, which is a huge step up from the original Plus and Pro. And because this is the Chromebook Plus, it has to have a pen, right? I mean, that would be weird for them to take that away, and it does. It's stowed a little bit differently than the original one was, but yeah, it's easy to get to. It's pretty much the same pen. It does have over 4,000 levels of pressure now, but I'm not really an artist, so I can't really take advantage of that stuff. I just know opening up Squid, jotting down notes has been really good. Again, because of the aspect ratio, holding this thing in portrait mode to take notes feels a little weird. I really like 3x2 displays for that because it's a little bit wider when it's in portrait mode. But other than that, the pen experience has been great, so there's really nothing to complain about there. Additionally, this device is being marketed partially, like if you go to their landing page that Samsung has set up for this device, with a 13 megapixel world facing cameras, and then I think it's a 5 megapixel, maybe an 8 megapixel front facing camera. I think it's 5. But either way, the front facing camera is serviceable, did some duo calls and that kind of stuff. It looks fine, as good as any other Chromebook. The world facing camera, as I've said in other videos, and I don't know when Google's going to fix this, it's just not good. I hate to say that. They're marketing it as it's going to be something worth using. It just isn't at all. The camera app is still incredibly slow. The pictures are so soft, they almost look like you've put some sort of Instagram effect, or not even Instagram, but like there's one that makes stuff look like paintings. It looks like I've made an oil painting of whatever I'm looking at. It's really bad, and Google needs to address it. And I'm shocked that Samsung hasn't figured out a way to address it. I mean, whether it's an Android app that takes better photos or whatever, this thing just doesn't take good photos. So if you're thinking, hey, they're really marketing the camera, they got the exploded view of the camera and all that kind of stuff on their landing page, surely it's a good camera experience. Think again, it is not good, not at all. And so we'll delve into some of that stuff for the full review, but I'm not holding my breath that that's going to get fixed anytime soon. So unfortunately, even though it's got a pretty decent sensor built in here, you're not going to be doing anything worth keeping on it. One other thing I noted in these first hours of using this device is queuing up a YouTube video. I noticed the sound was really rich and full. So much so that I went and grabbed the Pixelbook and opened it up, opened the exact same video I was watching, and there is a very discernible, very noticeable difference between the speaker quality on these two things. The Pixelbook sounded thin and harsh and tinny compared to kind of the richness of this device. And so I don't say that about many Chromebooks. Usually the speakers are real bad, and they're real bad on most laptops, but this thing is approaching that kind of iPad sound. And if you've ever had an iPad Pro and really listened to some good audio on it, you can tell it's full sounding, it's kind of rich sounding. It may not be the loudest thing in the world, but it sounds good. These speakers sound good, and that kind of shocked me. They're just bottom firing speakers. I don't know if it's because of the extra room in the chassis or what, but they've done something good here. The speakers sound really good. And while we're talking about thickness of the chassis, the device is a little bit thicker than the original, and it's about a ½ pound heavier. So you're going to notice that when you pick it up and move it around or have it in tablet mode. Internally, what we're looking at here is the Celeron 3965Y, and we've not seen this processor in any other device up to this point. It is kind of in the Kaby Lake, the 7th gen Kaby Lake line of processors, but at this point, it's getting so convoluted with naming processors and what Intel's doing with what. It's a Celeron. It's not the Celeron that kind of goes with the Apollo Lake chips, so it does better than that. We're getting 14,000, almost 15,000 on Octane, which is pretty good. I mean, it gets along just fine. You're going to see a hiccup from time to time. It's not a Pixelbook, and it's not, a Core M5 or Core i5 or anything like that, but it gets along pretty well. It really didn't give me too much pause at all doing my work today and doing some stuff with the kids on it. So other than that, you have 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of internal storage. And a lot of people get caught up on, well, why isn't this a Core M3 or whatever? Keep in mind, they're probably going to release a Samsung Chromebook Pro V2 as well. So they need to create some gap there so that they can have kind of the entry level and then the nicer version. But if you're coming from the original Plus, this thing runs circles around it. It's way faster. And then added into the fact that it's got way less pixels to push, I mean, it moves along just fine. So it's good to see Samsung at least move that bar forward, even though the RAM and internal storage are pretty much the same. So overall, what we're looking at here is a device that's just a little confusing, to be honest. It's a step back in certain areas and then a definite step forward in other areas. And maybe if you've never handled a Chromebook Plus to begin with, or a Pro, and you didn't think about those things, and I'm trying to see it from that perspective, you would be like, man, this feels like a really good Chromebook. Like, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. But then we have to reach back and compare it to what came before it, and there's stuff that it did better, and this one's more expensive, and it's the next version, and you just expect everything to move forward in improvements. And it feels like there's certain things that improved and certain things that didn't. So the jury's out for me right now. We still need to do a full review, obviously. I need to spend some more time with it and run more tests and form more opinions about it. I'm just not sure yet. I really opened the box expecting not to like it. From the spec sheet, I expected just to think it was bad in all ways, shapes, or forms, but it's kind of growing on me a little bit, and I kind of like it. And so I'm not really sure what to make of it yet. So you'll have to stick around for the full review. Guys, that's about it for this one, though. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button below. Stick around, and until next time, we'll see you.